if you are like the man or the woman that's running your business, you have to realize that your thoughts, your ideas, your communication carries more weight than anybody else. So if Trevor says something to do something at Carrot, people are gonna be like, oh, I got to do it because that's what the CEO wants, right? So just know that, and so like ask them to speak first, and then if you disagree, coach them, but hear them first because they might have better thoughts than you.
What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Carrot Cast podcast, the podcast with a funny name but a big mission. We help thousands of real estate investors and agents grow rock-solid mindsets, do better marketing so that you can build a business of freedom and impact. I'm your host, Trevor Mock. Let's dive into today's episode. What's up, y'all? So we're in studio again. And we've got the camera over there, so all of you on YouTube, what's up? If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, I've got a special guest with me, as always, but a different special guest, someone internally in Carrot, but not just someone, he's my number 2 here at the business. And so when we do Carrot camps, that's something that we'll talk about quite a bit, where people will say, I'm the founder, how do I find that integrator? How do I find the number 2? And so we're going to talk about our journey, and I'll introduce you guys to Alex. And once again, I urge you guys, if you're listening to the podcast version, go to YouTube or go to carrotcast.com, find this episode, or just click our YouTube channel and you'll find the one with Alex and I. But before I introduce Alex, y'all, I want to kind of give a little bit of context for number one, why we're here, and also how we got here. So as entrepreneurs, as the founder, oftentimes, the founder is kind of the hire quick start. Oftentimes the founder is the person who is the visionary, has some ideas, and they get the thing going. But what happens with all of us is we end up kind of getting a little bit in over our heads, right? We like the startup phase, we like the idea part of it, and we're fine with that. But then we leave a bunch of loose ends hanging. We start things, and that gives us energy of the start. But then as you start to go into the building of the maintaining of the running of the thing, oftentimes our energy goes down there. And one of the biggest things that I'll see in common with people that get 2, 3, 4 years into business and end up flaming out or switching focuses, we talked about it here at Carrot Camp, is I call it the 3-year turn and burn cycle. Is you got out of the startup phase, and then 3, 4 years in, all of a sudden that excitement goes away. You didn't figure out how to get the business running, or have someone plug someone in to do that with you or for you. And so then you go start something else. And you took all that momentum that you had with that new business, and then you got distracted with opportunity number 2, opportunity number 3. And then you're on this every 2 to 4 year turn and burn cycle. You can never figure out why you can't crack through that ceiling. You can never figure out why you can't finally scale a company. And it's actually probably what we're going to talk about today. It's finally finding someone who can be the yin to your yang, to grow the company, to run the company, so you can continue to do the things that you're the best at, and bring in someone else who gets that energy. So without further ado, welcome on the Carrot Cast, Alex. Is this really like your first legit time?
Yep.
I know we've talked about it over the years.
I know we've had a couple,
and
glad to be here. Thanks, Trevor.
So guys, I want you guys, through YouTube and through podcasts, to meet Alex Zerbach. He's we'll kind of go into the story there.
Sure.
We go way back. I didn't just put on LinkedIn or on Indeed.com looking for a director of operations or a COO or anything.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to give a lot of hope for people who are like, well, shoot, I don't have the budget to go out. I'm a 5-man show, and I don't have the budget to go out and hire a COO title. Or where do I start? Maybe our company's not big enough for a COO. We'll kind of walk through the path that we took. But Alex, why don't you kind of dive into, first of all, let's set the stage. What do you do at Carrot today? Like, what do you do? What's your job look like?
Yeah. So run operations. To me, that's people, profit, process, all the things that are like cost centers, or the day-to-day of running a business. So I know that might sound nebulous to some people, but you think about all the meetings and strategic planning and data and all the process that you have to run and continually update, keep in sync, make sure everybody's on the same page, communications going out, timing, all that stuff. And you just need somebody kind of keeping track of all that. So that weighs down a lot of people. I know a lot of people hate being on meetings or hate, certain aspects of business. And for the weird minority of us out there, we actually enjoy that. So you got to find somebody who is fired up by that kind of stuff.
And dude, we'll dive in, because that wasn't the role that you started here.
Yeah.
And that's a learning lesson for me as an entrepreneur too, that we'll talk about, about not selling your dreams into somebody else. Because I've done that a couple times with Jen. We talked about that on the executive assistant episode, so we'll link that one up for you guys. And I think I did it a little bit with you too early on. Like, hey, I like marketing. You should probably like marketing too, so let's bring you in on that side.
Well, yeah. I mean, like even going back to the beginning. So the story, I guess, is Trevor and I both went to college in Oregon Tech. Shout out Oregon Tech in Klamath Falls, Oregon.
Yeah, Hustlin' Owls.
And a couple years apart, and we had a mutual acquaintance, and it was going into my senior year. I knew I wanted to do something in like technology, something website related. You know, I was at the time like experimenting with WordPress websites, like putting them on for my family, like was really geeking out on that, and made a connection through the Parnell family and did an internship. So I was the first intern before Carrot was Carrot, blah, blah, blah. Carrot hadn't quite spun up yet. Trevor was like doing entrepreneurial things in other areas. And then I went and did a sales job for a water filtration company, which taught me a lot. I don't like sales. And then he said, yeah, come back. And I had a marketing degree. So like, it only made sense to, do marketing with your marketing degree. And I remember the exact moment, or like the catalyst for that conversation. We had went to a Russell Brunson mastermind in Boise. We're in the hotel room, and you're just fired up with like all these ideas, and we're like ideating and stuff. And I was like, man, I got to be honest, like this is overwhelming, and like all this marketing stuff. I was like, I don't know if I'm the guy, man. Like I don't know if I'm like the one to execute all this marketing stuff. And I remember you being like, well, there's some value here. Like, what do you like? What do you like see yourself doing here? And I was like, I just love like the business side of like everything. I'm like, well, let's explore what that looks like. And so that was kind of I remember there's like 3 or 4 milestones in my time here at Carrot. And I remember that being like a pretty important one.
Dude, so I remember that conversation vividly now, but it's interesting looking back, because I don't think I probably had the realization at that point that was, I knew materially we were talking about shifting your role, but it's cool hearing now that you had that epiphany yourself, right? That you had the chance to touch on sales and touch on marketing, which is really good and valuable, because for when I brought you in, I needed someone to help execute marketing, right? We weren't big enough to need an operations person. We, at that time when you came in, and we were probably less than 10 people. Definitely were.
Yeah, like 4 of us.
So there's no operations there. Like I'm operations at that point, right? And then Jen, my assistant, ran a lot of the kind of logistical type of things. So anything HR related, she would just everything that I would adopt, it would just fall off onto her if I didn't want to do it or couldn't do it. And so you can run like that for a period of time. So if you're an agent or an investor and you're listening to this and you're going, well, how does this apply to me when you're a company with 50 or so employees and you're a tech company? How does this relate? Well, it relates big time, because pretty much every company that I can think of, there's probably some anomalies, but pretty much every company I can think of, if you have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 employees, the same types of things have to go into your business to be able to help you as the founder get in your sweet spot, and then have someone else come into that. So you guys have probably heard of the book, was it Rocket Ship or something like that? They talk about the integrator. I think it's Marcus Buckingham. So that phrase, the integrator, comes up a lot. And whenever I'm in masterminds and they're like, oh, what's the biggest problem I have? It's always like, can't find an integrator. Where are the integrators at? Oh, you need an integrator. Like that comes up half the time, half the conversations. And that's always the big mystery, is where do we find the integrators? Right. So in this case, it was kind of cool. He came in as an intern. I think your integrator is the person, and I want to toss it over to you, kind of get your perspective, but I think an integrator for me is the person, number one, they can get stuff done. You trust them with anything. They're a high follow through, but they have enough of the visionary part of it to where they can cast vision. They can connect the vision. They're not just blinders on, give me a checklist and get stuff done. So it's definitely a unique person. They've got to be driven. They have to be able to grow fast if the company's going to grow. And we'll talk about that here in a bit. Yeah. Is there anything else that pops up for you, Alex, that the integrator should likely have?
No, I mean, you got it pretty well pegged. They have to be, I think there's like this need to achieve and be ambitious with, and it can't all be task driven. So there needs to be like you said, like they have a desire to grow. Like I even have a little bit of like the entrepreneurial bug in me, but it's not so like ravenous where I'm like, just going off and doing all like chasing all these ideas. So yeah, I mean, for me too, like anybody that's listening, I would say find a personality test that you really resonate with, and then go find like the yin to your yang on that. So like I'm a big fan of Enneagram. I know there's Colby, I know there's DISC, I know there's Myers-Briggs. Like go find one that you can like really understand yourself, and then see where you're deficient or weak, and then find somebody who's like the perfect counterbalance to that. And more than likely, if they have that integrator, if that's what you're looking for, just find one that'll kind of balance against that, and you'll have at least a good idea of like how the personalities will match up as you scale.
Dude, let's kind of dive into that part of it, because I think we get along pretty good, but there's friction every now and then, which there has to be, right? So let's touch on that. Let's kind of go through the years, anything that pops up for you, or any big pivotal moments, or even if it's specific combos, or anything that annoys the crap out of you that I do. Let's kind of touch on that stuff. So, which is probably a long list. What are some of the things that you can remember over the years being spots where there was friction that we had to work through? Or what are some of the things that me as a founder do that maybe have bugged you and big time in the past, but you've learned how to deal with now, or vice versa, that have bugged you, then I've addressed them and changed? It's a broad topic, but let's talk about friction between the integrator and the entrepreneur.
That's a great question. Let me share a couple stories and then tie it into that. I just like sharing stories. So I remember when we were doing a lot of the marketing, you'd be on like webinars, and we'd be like messing with the order form behind the scenes as like Trevor's like about to go into the pitch, and like he'd be up at like 1 o'clock in the morning like getting his slide deck, and me as the like integrator and like very much task driven, I'm like, come on man, like we got to hit these deadlines, so I'm not logging on at like 7 in the morning just freaking out. So I mean, we worked through that, but I look back on it now and I like laugh and I think, man, that was really fun. Right. Yeah. There were times it was stressful, but it's fun.
There were times literally, where
I don't want to put you on blast.
No, you're good, man. Any of that's open. There were times literally when I was starting the webinar, and this is probably one of those moments where I'm like, I didn't get all the last slides done.
Or the offer's not even finalized.
The offer wasn't even done. And so the webinar had to start, and I'd have 5 slides at the end that weren't even finished. And I was literally going, oh shoot, the webinar starts in 15 minutes, and this is going to take me 35 minutes to get these done. But I can type up in 15 minutes to Slack message to Alex what I want done in slide 42, 45, 46. And I'm just going to hope by the time I get there that it's done and what I thought. And so I would send it through to him. And I think this goes into the traits that you want to look for in someone too, that I think your integrator should be as calm as possible under pressure. And those pressures can change as the company grows. We can even talk about that on the growth path you've been on lately. But yeah, in those moments, like me as the entrepreneur, I think I kind of thrive under that. And it's taken me years to realize that most people don't. And actually, a lot of people crumble under that. And so you want to make sure that your integrator doesn't. So if you're working with someone to figure out, are they going to be a fit to this? You can either purposefully run them through really crazy, tough tests like that, or just see how they react to stuff that comes up like that. Can they act quickly? Can they take on and shift priority if they need to, and make the thing happen that you need to make happen, and not just have to have full direction for everything, but you can give them outcomes and you can see them drive it to fruition and go, okay, that was 99.5% exactly the way that I would have done it, or it doesn't matter, it got done. Right. So that's a biggie. What else? Let's go down the list, man. Because the reason I want to do it is because it's gonna people listening to this going, oh my gosh, that's me. If Trevor can find someone who is amazing here, I can too. So what are some of the other things?
I mean, I think this is just classic, like high quick start entrepreneur, but like there's no shortage of ideas, right? And I think too, you'll have like a backlog of ideas. And so like there's these planning cadences that will come up in a business annually or quarterly or whatever. And it's just like, oh my gosh, it can just feel like overwhelming in terms of like, we got to do this, we got to do that, but we got to hire here. And I'm like, okay. So I'm not saying no to any of it. I'm just saying like, no, not right now. And like, can we talk about this? Can we like just pause on this for a second? And I know for like entrepreneurs, you're like, oh man, this guy's dragging me down, or like, yeah, I see it, there's the budget, like we just got to unlock it, we got to go. And so that time, like at times I know like there's been like friction and rubs where I'll like get offline or whatever after the day. I'm just like, man, it just seems like I can't keep up and blah blah blah. And I mean, I'm fine talking to too about like my journey through stress and like how that's changed over the last year. I used to be very uptight, anxious, like stressed out, like it was affecting my like mental state, my physical state. I've worked through all that, completely different with how I view stress. But yeah, I mean, I would 100% agree with what you said. Like the integrator needs to be able to handle stress really well, needs to be able to prioritize. And then where I'm at right now is also be able to delegate. Because as you scale, like the integrator can't do everything on their own. And that's like the who question, not how. For a long time, I was in the, how do I get this done? You know, how do we implement this in the business, whatever. And, it's such common wisdom, but like I'm always shocked when you like ask somebody to do something and like they do it better, they do it faster. It's less stress on your plate. Like it's just, you know, the better you can delegate, prioritize, time management, like those are all incredibly important for like an integrator to, and if they don't come in with that skill set, I think as long as the entrepreneur or somebody is around to help coach or point out the weaknesses and give them like those growth opportunities. I think even if an integrator is like pretty junior, like maybe there's somebody in your business currently who you see that potential in, but they haven't really like proven it. I'd give them the opportunity with some coaching, get a mentor around them, and just see if they can't be, you know, that for you.
Yep, I love it, dude. Let me fill in a gap really quick. Something popped up in my mind, so we're gonna cast Alex's whole kind of progression here.
Sure.
And I think it's probably a pretty good progression that could work for anybody if you're starting when you're really small and seeing how you can kind of grow someone through to really being the person who can run the company. So you start off as the intern. The first intern, I think we've only had 2. The other one was Austin.
My buddy.
That was your buddy from Australia.
Yep.
And then I don't think we actually had like a title, but later we said, oh, he's probably marketing manager.
Yeah.
Once we actually knew what titles we were supposed to do. So he was kind of like the marketing manager for a few years. We would talk marketing stuff, and then Alex would go and execute it, like be behind the slides as I'm actually delivering the presentation or whatever, building all the pages,
running the Facebook ads, conversion tests, all the fun marketing stuff.
Yep. And then he had that epiphany in Boise when we were there at Brunson's Inner Circle Mastermind. And then I don't remember how long it took, but it took a little bit of time to then transition you out of that, bring in another person, move you over to operations manager. I don't even remember. What did you do?
As ops manager?
Yeah.
Well, that was around the time that we were like, you know, we had things like, you know, OKRs were coming on. So we were trying to like improve our strategic planning. So it wasn't all just like on Trevor. And around that time too, so it was like the project management of it as well in Asana. And then we knew that there was like, you started just like handing more responsibility over the budget. So understanding the budget, you know, as well or better than you. And then what was it, 2019? Yeah, it must have been 2019. We said, let's get a people team function going. So like spin that up. And yeah, we've just been growing a bunch since there.
So ops manager, and that was kind of, I mean, looking back, it was a catch-all role. Like it was like anything that kind of needed to get done around the company that was something I wouldn't or couldn't take. It kind of fell into Alex's lap, which then leads us into one of the next transitions and transformations Alex made in his role. Really realized that we needed someone who couldn't just manage tasks and projects, like that was important, but we really needed someone who could kind of run the company, like run the cadence of the company. And this is where I think it's important for us as entrepreneurs to really not look at just what the skill set is of the person right now, but to really look at what is the company going to need in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years, in 4 years, and then pull back and say, do I believe that this person can get there? And if so, how long might it take to get them there? And what's the list of things that we're going to have to work through to get you there? And so at that point, we had sat down. I'm like, you really, as you're building the people team and get the people team added, so now you have employees working underneath you. We moved him to director of operations, which I think was still a catch-all role. At that point, it was like, just help us get everything done. He took on more of the planning, more of that kind of stuff. And then as we stepped into this year, for sure last year, as we stepped into 2020, but then as we stepped into this year, we're really looking at it going, okay, Alex, then I'm going to toss it over to you for your thoughts and comment. But you brought up before that you were really, really hyper driven on just getting stuff done, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of like people pinging stuff over, and Alex was the guy he was the fixer,
mm-hmm.
right? He could just get stuff done. And eventually I started to notice, I'm like, man, Alex is the fixer for everybody now. And now all of a sudden I am finding myself losing bandwidth again, because I really need someone to run the business and not be the guy or gal who can just step in and just solve everything for people. And how has that shift been for you, man, from being the guy who people delegate tasks to and delegate projects to now you having to be a leader and delegate results and projects to people?
It's been amazing. I feel so blessed for my time here at Carrot, because throughout the entire time, there's always been, opportunities to grow. Mm-hmm. And with that, that my drive or my ambition, it's always being like satisfied. There's always something like the next thing, which is fantastic. I would never, me personally, would never want to go work at like a corporate job, because I just know that that's, either harder or just non-existent. Mm-hmm. Right. So for me, a lot of my identity early on was wrapped up in like being the guy that can complete tasks. Mm-hmm. Like that's what I thought, that is value. Like that's it. That's my personality. That's my unique ability.
And that's probably perfect from like a few employees up to maybe even 20, right?
Yeah, you got to get stuff done, mm-hmm. right? I mean, you got to get stuff done. You got to move the numbers. Very metric driven, analytical, which is my personality type. But I also have an amazing blessing in a dad who's like a leadership coach, and he's been, beating into my head over the last 18 years or whatever, this thing called leadership, right? And just very recently, I've like realized, oh, okay, I'm starting to see what that is, and right. And so for me, in the last 6 months, I've realized I've had a shift of going from transactional to transformational. I'm not an expert. I still have a long ways to go, but for the first time in my professional and even personal life, I see a different way to like interact with people mm-hmm. and like do business. And I'm like, oh, maybe this is what some of these like ultra successful people are talking about, right? I mean, just the way I run like one-on-one meetings now, like it's just the way I approach them is so much different. Mm-hmm. I'm slowing down. I'm taking time to like check in on team members, like ask them about, their day or their spouse or their plans coming up, talking to them like, how are you feeling about X, Y, and Z in the company? Whereas before it'd be like, hey, this project's due. What are we doing next week to get this project done? Hey, this metric's slipping. What are we going to do? Yeah. Still got to talk about that stuff. Still important, but there's like this whole new approach, right? Like you had mentioned, like being delegated to, and now having to refine that understanding and that skill to then delegate.
Yep. Yeah. Dude, so I want to dive into kind of what your and I working cadence and relationship is. So once again, everyone listening to this, watching this, you guys have to have context that each business has phases, right? There's like the 0 to 100K, and that's probably just you, right? It's a person. You can get to $100,000 a year in a business with just a person. Now with Carrot, we had by that time $100,000 a year. And we had people. I don't know if it was like a support person maybe, and then Chris, my CTO, co-founder, building the thing. But it wasn't much of us to get to that. But then it's 100K to 300K a year. Same thing. I think you just scale up your lead gen and get your lead gen systems nailed, and you just for our business might add another support rep kind of a thing. For an investment business, it might be adding an acquisition manager or whatever it is. But then from 300K to $1 million is where the real big jump starts to happen.
Stuff starts breaking. Yeah,
stuff starts breaking, especially if you're growing fast, where we grew like 300% a year, and then it was like 150 to 200% the next year. And now we're around the 25 to 30% a year around that, which when we're a bigger business, 8-figure year business, it's still pretty good growth. But then it's the 300 to $1 million. You're probably in that phase where you're maybe 5 to 8, 5 to 10 people, depending on your business. I know people like Bo Hollis. He's a one man show with a bunch of contractors, right? Yep. He's having like a record month in July, and he's the one dude. He finally got an office though last week, which is cool. Awesome. So there are anomalies to this. Okay, it's not a rule. From $1 million to $3 million, that's where you really need to kind of the same thing, scale up your delivery of your systems. Have people kind of buy you as the founder back more times. That's when you need your operations manager, probably at that point, the 1 to 3. Getting from 3 to 10 now is the tricky part. That's where Alex stepped into director of operations. That's where Alex stepped into running more of the cadence. That's where he stepped into having a lot more responsibility for owning parts of the company. And now 10 to 30 million, that's a much bigger jump. And that's now where we're figuring out, what does that look like?
Right.
I need to pull back and be a lot more strategic, which means Alex does as well, which means now he needs to build a team, got an assistant. Yep. This is the whole thing, right? So I'll kind of leave it with this, and I'll toss it over to you. It's one thing I had been realizing, Alex, is as I'm looking around at the leaders, I have to kind of go back to myself at this stage where Carrot, we had the number of employees that you guys as leaders have as direct reports now, which was 2016 when your dad came in to be my leadership coach.
Yep.
We had 7, 8, 9 people, and I had to learn how to cast vision for the company, create a vision that was written, had to learn how to start to delegate better. Had to actually get a meeting cadence in place. I wasn't amazing at it, but we had to get something in place. We had to have a plan and a way of managing the projects. And when you kind of look at it in a micro way at each team, you as a team, you have one of the biggest teams in the company now between support, services, and ops. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh shoot, what does Alex have to do right now? He has to have a written vision for his team and communicate that vision well. He has to feed up to the company. He has to have a good communication cadence with that team. He's got to get one-on-ones nailed. He's got to have a good plan that people can see where it is. It's the same things.
Yep.
So we're just essentially duplicating that across 6, 7, 8 leaders to get to 20, 30 million.
Right.
You just got to have the right leaders.
Yep.
Let me toss this question your way. So, what do you feel? What do you feel is the hardest thing for your job right now? What's the hardest thing?
It's a great question. Well, currently, I think. I guess this gives a little insight into Carrot too, but I mean, as you grow, we just hired like crazy. Mm-hmm. Like we hired more people in the last 6 to 8 months than we have in 12 to 18 months. Mm-hmm. So there's this two things that are happening, right? We got to figure out the best way to communicate. Some of the ways we used to kind of, I guess, have crutches or skate by on communication aren't working anymore. So we got to make sure everybody's bought in on the vision, make sure everybody sees how their role connects to the vision, making sure, numbers and everything are gelling the way we need them to. And then the other thing is I think there's, different personalities, different experiences people are bringing into the company and optimizing those, right? Utilizing those. I know there's people currently at Carrot who have a wealth of knowledge that we haven't tapped into yet. Yeah. And so I just see, the Jim Collins, right people, right bus. I love the team we've created here at Carrot. And I think, there's a couple small moves where we can get hey, this idea, get this person sitting over here next to this person, come up with your best idea, figure out the way to best communicate that over to product, over to services. And we're going to unlock some pretty cool potential in the business. Yeah. But right now, I think we're aware of the problem. We just don't see okay, do this, this, and this, but we're getting there.
Dude, it's hard, man. It's hard. Let me switch topics on you. So let's say there's a founder, listen to this. It's a real estate investor, agent, someone in the software world, doesn't matter what it is. And they're going, so how the heck do I need to change and how do I need to show up to be able to serve someone who actually can come in and do their job? So looking at me and be fully honest, everything, man, looking at me, what have I changed and had to change that made it possible for you to be able to do your best job? Where before I didn't have this habit, I didn't have this way of showing up, I didn't have this way of doing whatever, and it made it hard for you to do your job, or it made it impossible for me to coach you to do the best. What are some of those things that I've changed that have made your job more effective in the company?
So I've seen a huge transformation in you, the way you show up to calls, you ask questions. So now, as before, it was you'd share your ideas. It was a idea back and forth kind of thing. And oftentimes the integrator can leave that call and be so what am I supposed to do? Now you're asking me questions. And oftentimes I'm oh shoot, it's either illuminating to me that I don't know, I need to go do some research, I need to go pull away and figure that out. Or I'm it's building your confidence, oh, he's thought through this and he has a plan to solve this and I didn't have to give him the answer. So that's one thing that I've definitely noticed. I noticed too, I don't know, like, and this is not intentional, I think, on a lot of founder or entrepreneurs' parts, but like you include me on emails now from the beginning of the convo, and it's like more like, hey, FYI, and then I can like track the correspondence like forward. Whereas before, it'd be like, oh shoot, I probably should have CC'd you on this.
Bring Alex in at the very end.
The convo's done, but here's some context for you.
Yeah.
So I think it's just like definitely way better at delegating, way better at asking questions, way better at just, even like here's a simple question. You and I both read that Coaching Habits book. It's like, what help do you specifically need from me? Like, what can I do to help you? It's just,
what's the biggest challenge?
Yeah, what's your biggest challenge right now? What's on your mind? Is there anything else? Like those kind of questions are pivotal to, I think, building trust with whoever you're asking them to, expressing confidence in them, and then just not offering up an answer because maybe they have a better idea. And I think too, like I will say that if you are like the man or the woman that's running your business, you have to realize that your thoughts, your ideas, your communication carries more weight than anybody else. So if Trevor says something to do something at Carrot, people are gonna like be like, oh, I got to do it because that's what the CEO wants, right? So just know that, and so like ask them to speak first, and then if you disagree, coach them. But hear them first because they might have better thoughts than you.
Dude, that's so big. I'm still working on it, right? Like I'm still working out some of these habits that worked amazingly well to get us off the ground and to get us through the first million and the first 5 million and stuff like that. But it doesn't work very well when you have a leadership team and now you're looking to grow and scale. And it's like a muscle, where you got to work it. You got to keep working it. You're going to recognize sometimes when it's hurting and it's not working the way that you hoped. And I can definitely attest to that, where my pattern before every time was to hop on calls and people say, hey, like, how are we going to get to here? I'm like, I already know. It's already in my brain. It's already figured out. It's like, we get to here by doing this. And then it kind of makes it to where everyone else doesn't talk at that point, which isn't the intention. And I'll still catch myself doing it sometimes. And I was like, oh, shoot. Even though I think I'm clear on that, I just bought myself another job is what I just did. Is because now I'm the strategy guy for everything within that. They don't have buy-in on it, full buy-in, because they weren't a part of the process of coming up with the idea, or I didn't coach them into it. And so now I bought myself a new job being the leader of that thing, even though I don't want to be, and I'm probably going to be the bottleneck in it forever. And that's tricky. That's still a tricky thing that I find myself oftentimes hindsight 2020 going, oh, yeah, I just bought myself another job. I should have asked questions and took that monkey off of my back and put it onto theirs, or kept it on their back instead of taking it. Yep. Couple more thoughts, man. So you talked about stress and stress management. And so this was probably, you and I have had some hard convos, but I think that's one of the important things with your integrator. You need to be insanely transparent, full trust. And like the book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, at the bottom, you have to have full trust that in each other, in the ability of that person, the ability of that person to grow. If you don't, then you have to address it because it's not going to go anywhere. But number 2, you have to eliminate the fear of conflict early. And I don't know if there's like, can you peg, was there like a moment, was there anything that we did, or have we always had that ability just to communicate fully openly with each other?
I would say it's definitely grown in the last like year and a half. Of course, when you're, starting a relationship, like that's just a very hard thing to like do. But now it's kind of like the, before and after, right? Yeah. Like I have no, like, because that trust is so absolute, I have no problem as long as like Trevor and I both know like we're coming from the right place in the heart, so I can say anything. And even if I say something in like maybe a negative way and I come back, I'm like, hey, he's like, yeah, I already know, like, it's all good. So mining for conflict is essential, I think, for sure.
So mining for conflict. And if you don't mind me saying, kind of this last fall, as we're looking at the next year, and the thing that was popping up in my mind is I've been at this with Carrot for almost 8 years, if you track it way back before Carrot was Carrot. And it's the longest I've ever done anything. It's like before it was always 2, 3, 4 years. It'd be the turn and burn cycle. Like I was on it, right? Because I never had a way to find the integrator. Never had a way to build a business. It was always idea, launch it. I don't want to run it. Idea, launch it. I don't want to run it. And so now, as an entrepreneur, you have to look at it and go, well, how do I continue to have that within the business? Where you're not having to launch something new, but you're continually building on the same foundation. And can I relaunch my career in that business? Can I relaunch the level of leader I am? Can I relaunch my workday? Right, and that's kind of what I was thinking about coming into this year. I was going, the workday I'd adopted, which is a little bit of a unique experience because we were in between marketing directors, so I was running that job halfway mediocre, if that. And it was probably a unique pain point, but I'm like, I don't want to have to be in the daily operations of Carrot by the end of 2021. Now, for those of you listening, that doesn't mean me stepping away from the company. It doesn't mean me doing any of that. It means the business is in a spot where I don't need to be there daily. Which for me, it's less on what does that mean to Trevor's actual schedule and more on what does that mean to the actual business and its health. And if the business can truly run well and grow without me there every day, it means it has the right leaders, it has the right processes, we have the right vision in place, and then I can do my best work and add my best value and really unleash you guys to do your best work. So that's my thinking behind it. But if you're cool with it, once you dive into some of the things that we had talked about, the growth opportunities there, and just like real hard convos of can you hack it? Like can you grow there?
Yeah, I mean we'll get vulnerable. We can dive into that. Yeah, I don't remember the exact timing, but I actually remember like where I was. It was at my parents' house coincidentally, and yeah, we were having that convo, which was like Trevor was saying like what he was looking at, and I was like, man, I don't know if I'm the guy. I was like really just in a bad spot with like stress and just feeling like imposter syndrome and like anxiety and new dad, and I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like, but then had some amazing people around me talking to me, and they're like, are you running from something or are you afraid to run to something?
Oh, I got you. Cool.
And I was just like, yeah, and they're like, I've competed my whole life, right? Won a national championship in basketball. It's like that thrill of like the unknown and like always having like the goal and going, it's like, okay, I'm going to do it. So yeah, mid 2020, I just dedicated myself to reading, cutting out some bad habits I had, saying I'm either going to fail or I'm not, but I'm just going to give it everything, put my head down, do the work, and just like live with myself with whatever that outcome is. And so for me, I still have a long ways to go, but it's just not being afraid of the failure, and then also just like rededicating yourself to the work it's going to take, and realizing too, like this is a lifelong journey. Like business is, there are milestones, there are checkpoints, there are, accolades, but end of the day, it's like we're going to hit the next like growth pain, and like all this stuff's going to be hard again. Yep. And so just looking forward to that, appreciating it. That was my big like turnaround, especially with like the stress management, reading some books, understanding like the brain psychology, what's going on with like my like hormones, and then finding just like active ways to like calm down my amygdala. It's like, okay, we don't want cortisol. So like, what do you got to do? Do you got to go on a walk? Do you got to listen to like some music? Like, what do you have to do to, it's so simple for some people. Like maybe I'm my personality type is the weirdo, but like for me, the big unlock with stress management would be like, can you control this situation?
Yeah.
And then is this something you can control within the next 15 minutes or 15 hours? If the answer is no, then you really need to calm down, because there's not a whole lot you can actually do in the moment. Yep. If it's something you can control in the next 1 year, or think about in your business, one quarter, okay, well, what's the first step you would have to take to get there? Write it down. Yeah. Okay, well, I just removed the stress because you just like rationalized it away. And you're like, okay, nothing to do today because I got to wait for X, Y, and Z. Yeah. So that to me was kind of the unlock on the stress management side.
Dude, and you and I have talked about it a bunch because it was like a drastic change.
Yeah.
I mean, it was...
Tell them about like when I'd show up on calls, right? And like the nonverbal cues, and like people wouldn't even want to bring me stuff because they're like, oh, he's already stressed out. I don't want to make this guy like blow a gasket.
Dude, and that's important, right? Because for me in my growth as well, like you were saying before, being the CEO, and it does apply to your role now too, right? But being the CEO, everything you do is magnified. Yep. I don't remember who said it, but it's like... I don't know, I'm going to butcher it. Everything's magnified. Let's go with that. And so when that's the case, it's not just what you say, it's how you show up on a call. If you're in a bad mood and you're not feeling it, you can't let that show. Like you just can't, because now that we have almost 50 employees, if I do that, where do people start to, where do their minds go? Yep. Shoot, is there something wrong with Trevor? Is there something wrong with the company? Yeah. Like whatever it is. And then they start to run with it. And so it's not a false positivity. It's a recognizing, okay, I've got a lot to be grateful in. Yeah, there's some things, we got to tackle. There's some things I got to grow in. I'm going to do exactly what you mentioned. I'm going to put them into context. I'm going to put them over here. I'm going to remove some of that pressure, but I'm going to show up for the people in front of me, and recognize that everything I do is going to get magnified. And so Alex had a pattern that I would never call. He had it for years. I would just never call it out because I didn't need to. Right at that time, the habits and patterns you had and the habits and patterns I had worked just fine to get us where we were. Mm-hmm. But going into 2020, 2021, we started to look at our goals and went, oh shoot, if we want to get here, those habits and patterns will no longer work. Mm-hmm. Those will no longer get us where we want to go. Trevor now has to show up in this way because the way he was showing up won't work. Alex now has to show up this way because the way he was showing up won't work. And if that's the case, something has to change. And if we look at me, and I've done podcasts on this before, it's either I've got to intentionally change my habits and patterns. Yep. I've got to find a new CEO who can be the person. So my job's, just as much as anyone else's, if this company is better suited by another person be the CEO, I'll be the first one to say and agree to it if I feel like I can't get there. But then the last thing is, or you like sell the thing, right? Mm-hmm. And every time that would cross my mind where things are getting hard, I'm like, man, should I just sell this thing? I'm like, well, only three reasons you would sell it. FOMO, fear of missing out. Is there like a unique market timing that's once in a lifetime and you'll never get it back? Okay, which is legit. Number 2 is you don't believe in the vision anymore, the purpose, the mission of the company, which I do more than ever. And then number 3 is you just don't like your job right now. Like you don't like the weekly job that you've had, and for too many weeks in a row, like Steve Jobs says, you look at it and go, I just need to change it. I don't like it. And so anytime I've got to those spots, it's always that, man, I bought myself a job again that in this phase of 6 weeks, I'm not as pumped about it and I need to change it again. But Alex would show up to calls and it might be something I would say, or oftentimes it was something I would say. I would maybe in my mind not realize it, but I was changing course or add something like I'd already approved something, but now I had extra context, and then I would say something else that contradicted what we had already agreed on. But now I have extra context, so for me it sounded relevant. And then Alex would kind of like sit back, and he'd like put his hands over his face, and you could just completely tell all of his energies went like on the floor. And no one on the leadership team would mention it, but you could tell they all felt it. And in that moment, where I realized, man, I've got to be a better leader. It wasn't me looking at Alex and going, he's not sufficient. It was me looking at myself going, man, I have to be the type of leader who can help our people grow. And if I can't step in and have that uncomfortable conversation and create some healthy conflict, then I can't be the type of leader that's going to get us where we need to go.
Right.
And so I looked at it more from that perspective, is what do I need to change about myself? And so we had the conversation and we had the open dialogue of us being able to bring it up. And I'm like, is it okay if I bring it up every time I see it? And he's like, yeah, so I would. And then it stopped, which was really cool. And everyone noticed. Yep. Everyone noticed the energy. The scores on our meetings started to go up and everything. So it's so cool, man. I'm so proud of the way that you've adjusted and transformed.
I want to piggyback on that on a couple things. So, one is doubling down, like you attract the energy that you put out, right? And number 2 would be kind of going back to what we mentioned at the beginning of this, is if you're looking for an integrator or just somebody to come alongside you. Trevor gave some coaching, and I had 2 options. I could have either been like, I'll try it. But if somebody's fundamentally willing to like analyze themselves and change and grow and like be pushed in that way, it tells you that they can like keep up with you and like scale, right? So I would say, getting somebody like initially that can do the tasks is great. And then as you kind of see those opportunities to coach them, just make sure that they're willing to kind of keep up and take that, those opportunities and always looking for them to improve. And I think that's like kind of a nuance or a tweak. It's gonna be hard, right? Like you're not gonna know when you first hire somebody if they have that ability, but you'll know, a couple of years in, and if it makes sense, for them to continue growing with you. So I just wanted to kind of call that out as well. That it's now like I fundamentally believe everybody wants to show up to their job and do an amazing job. Like there's very few people out there who are just okay coasting by. Now I know that's probably like, well, I know quite a few people. Okay, sure. But to have a leader like Trevor who's willing to call out faults, give you the opportunity, give you the coaching, give you the time, the space, the resources, whatever you need to improve, like I would just strongly encourage everybody listening to like be that leader. Like this week, find one person on your team where you can like give them a slight tweak on their behavior, their actions, and just see how they respond. And I think that'll speak volumes.
Dude, and it's hard. And here's something I want to jump on what you mentioned there is, I think it's easy. And we're going through this here at Carrot too, right? Where it's easy as a leader to see someone not performing the way that you want and talk to them about it, right? Like have some good talks about it, but then them not get there and go, well, it's them.
Right.
And that's something that maybe it is, right? Maybe it is that person that they're just not able and willing to step up and grow at the pace that you need them to grow to do that job. And that's legit, and that happens a lot. But also what I'd challenge you as leaders to do is what Alex had mentioned, is ask, have I truly coached them well, right? Like what if I would have kept letting you show up to calls like that? And then the confidence of the other leaders started to go down about you, which made you even less confident on your work. And then because of that, I'm making stuff up. And then people would start coming to me and making some comments. And then it's like, oh, shoot, Alex, I don't think you're capable of this. So let's move you over here. Or in that case, you probably would have went and did your own thing, right? But like you were saying, it's knowing and seeing, hey, number one, does this person have a core values match? Like, are they amazing core values match? Number two, can I see them growing in this way? And what tests can I throw at them? And so over the years, I've always thrown tests at you. Mm-hmm. Like that one webinar thing, it wasn't an intentional test. In hindsight, it was like, oh, that was a test. I wasn't meaning, it was just it was disorganization is what it was.
Sure.
But it was a test to go, oh, that guy can handle things like this fast and he gets them done. Okay, well, I'll give him some more responsibility now. Or as you grew into director of operations, it was like, hey, Alex, all this finance stuff that I've always been the guy who always hopped on, and I've always been the guy who's hopped on with our CFO every week, and no one else has. And I've always been the guy that handles any of this finance stuff and budget conversations. Man, like, what if you were to do that stuff? And it took about a year probably, mm-hmm. But I don't do that stuff now. I look at the reports. I'll dig in and ask some questions. If I kind of get a sense that we need more clarity, some spot, or I want to kind of pressure test it to see how far we really did get into the strategy of that. And then I'll go, oh, cool, he did think about those things. Cool, check the box, builds more confidence. But as a leader, definitely get a gauge for their core values set, a gauge for, are they willing to do this? And you've got to test them. And then give them honest coaching, test them, honest coaching, test them. And there's things now that if we were to look back 2 years that you own, or things I always owned, yep. That we would have looked back, or we would look ahead like, no, there's no way. There's no way that Alex is going to have all the finance calls. Now the whole finance department's underneath Alex's team. Yeah, right? Where 2 years ago, he was never touching anything finance related. And he's the guy that looks at all the P&Ls. He's the guy that has the finance team underneath him. He runs and owns the support team, the services team, the ops team, like all those things. And so that happened in 2 years, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Thinking back, like, it feels, what's the saying? Like, days are short, or years are long and days are short. Other way around. Yep. Anyways, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to think back. But yeah, I mean, when you're in the moment or in like the weeds, the trenches, so to speak, yeah, I would just encourage people to like pull up, look back, look forward, and appreciate and be grateful for all the things you have yet to accomplish and all the hard stuff ahead, but also just, yeah, I mean, all the growth you have made. That is crazy to think about, especially on the finance side, for sure.
Dude, so a couple more questions and we'll wrap this. Books, I know you're a big reader. I'm a big reader.
Oh, yeah.
So if there was a CEO or an integrator listening to this, but a CEO and saying, hey, what are the books I should give my person? We've got a team of 5 to 15, and that's a big range, but what let's say 1 to 3 books should they give them?
Okay. One is Ego is the Enemy. I always recommend that book, but I would encourage them to read it and see what they think, right? You should be careful that the integrator, I think, doesn't want that, spotlight. They want it, like the COO Alliance, which I'm a part of, like, we talk a lot about in there, like, you are there to serve the CEO. You're there to serve the company and the mission. You're not looking for the spotlight. Like, you're not trying to be out front. You prefer to be behind the scenes or facilitating so the CEO can be, recognized for the growing the company. So have them read Ego is the Enemy. See where their ego, or see what they think about ego, right? And kind of do a check there. 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's been one of the more recent books that I've read.
It's a good one, man.
Perhaps it's like the
phase.
It
up every day.
Yeah, perhaps it's the phase we're in, but like, I'm looking at it outside of like business too. And I'm like talking to my friends. I'm like, okay, so I have trust, and like, we don't really talk about hard stuff, and I'm like looking at So I would say 5 dysfunctions of a team is honestly any Patrick Lencioni book. I pull so many nuggets out of his books, and they're all business fables. So it feels like you're cheating when you're reading it because it's easy. I mean, those are the 2 right now. The other one, Radical Candor, we're doing that as a book club, and this is my 2nd time reading it. I like it a lot because it's like framework driven. So if you want something that, maybe you're feeling like the pressure internally, like convos aren't being had or like communications like not as clear as it could be, like pull that up and just like start stealing some of those frameworks. Radical Candor is a good one. Anybody who's, I guess, interested in leadership should always start with developing the leader within you. I know that's my dad's like strong recommendation as well. Oh, and then sorry, one more. Like I said, I love books. The 7 coaching habits or the 7 coaching questions or whatever. I can't remember the author's name, but
Michael Bungay Stanger or something like
there
that.
You go. Yeah, I think he's Australian. But if you're looking to grow your ability to like coach and ask like good questions, there's 7 questions. He gives the psychology behind them. He kind of gives a case study or a example, like lists out his sources, which I like really appreciate my analytical brain. But yeah, those are just some that are coming to mind right now.
Cool. I like it. Those are good ones. Last question, man, then we'll wrap this up. And it's been a blast just kind of diving in with you. And so Alex doesn't live in Roseburg, by the way. So you guys might be thinking, well, does the person need to be on site? It'd probably make it easier. I mean,
it would definitely make it easier. Oh yeah.
It'd be easier for sure. But he lives a few hours away and we make it work. And it's the first time he's been down here in a while with the pandemic and stuff. So pumped to have you down here, buddy.
Yep.
For sure.
Appreciate
so in closing, where do you want to go from here? Like what are your aspirations professionally? Where do you want to go from here 3 years from now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, this journey I'm on already with like the transformational leadership, I want to grow in that as much as I have over the last 2 years. I want to get better at coaching people. There was this event I was at, the guy leading it was like, hey, who here thinks they're great at delegation? And like 20% of the room raised their hand. And then he's like, keep your hand up if you've trained or taught somebody how to delegate really well or is better than you. Nobody raised their hand. I'm like, so I want to be the guy that's raising his hand, that keeps raising his hand. So all the stuff I'm learning, I want to see me able to like pass it on or have people be like, oh yeah, Alex taught me this about that. And just see it light up other people like it has me.
Yeah, I love it.
There you go.
I love it, man. Well, dude, I appreciate the time and appreciate you as a friend and business partner too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, it's going to be awesome and crazy and all the stuff that goes with it. Just kind of seeing where we end up going as a business, but also friendship. I'm so pumped to see where you go as an operator, as a father, as a husband, and man of faith. And this phrase keeps on popping up to me. Seth and I and Brady are studying 1 James a lot right now. Like literally we have most of 1 James memorized.
I love it.
Yeah, like legit memorized. And so the part of it that pops up is count it all joy, my brothers, when we meet trials of various kinds. And it talks about, the testing of that faith creates steadfastness and makes you perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. And in the trials that we have in business, it's never always going to be smooth sailing. We're going to have amazing days. You're going to have amazing moments. You might have amazing weeks or maybe even amazing months. But you're never going to have every single day be amazing. Every single week isn't going to be amazing. There's going to be trials. And so having someone to ride alongside with like you, having someone who is equally as committed to growing as a person, is really important. It helps me a lot, and it gives me a lot of confidence knowing that we're going into battle together, and that I can push you and you can push me. That when I talk about how fast I need to grow, where I need to grow, and then it pulls you up with it. I know you're up for the challenge, but also vice versa, where you challenge me and go, hey, like this is where you need to get better at, Trevor, because it's making things harder for us. And so I just count it all joy, man. It's hard to sometimes, but count it all joy when we go through these trials together, and appreciate you leading the way through. And being the leader that you are, man. So thank you.
Appreciate it, Trevor. Thank you so much, man.
Oh, for sure. So guys and gals, what I want you guys to do is, this is our second episode where it's kind of, or third, I guess, where it's deep in behind the scenes of Carrot, talking to the people right around me. Let me know in the YouTube comments box. If you're new to Carrot and you found us through a YouTube search or something like that, for context, we're a multiple 8-figure a year company, a remote workforce software company. About 10 of us are here locally. And so this can work from small to larger companies. But let us know what other types of roles you'd love to hear or have me bring from behind the scenes in our company to put in this hot seat. Brady on the content side, or anybody else from around the company that you would love to have here that would add value to your business, so you can see how to run that, how to have those relationships. So appreciate you, man. Guys, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, and check out the executive assistant episode just like this, where I dive in with Jen, my executive assistant, 9 years now, which is crazy.
Yep.
On how she's grown and how she's continuing to grow. Her and I had a really good, challenging conversation earlier in the week with our one-on-one about her growth path moving forward. And I'm always excited when people accept that challenge, which she has. So it's been fun, guys. Hit us with a comment below. Awesome. Thanks, man.